Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be doing my 14.16 ADC tier list, so if you have content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. There weren't that many changes this patch. We obviously saw changes directly towards Senna and Lucian. These kind of came across more as adjustments. Obviously Lucian, they're trying to push him out of the mid lane at the moment as he's really taking over there in elite play. In Senna's case, she received a plethora of changes for support role, trying to encourage her more onto enchant builds. Obviously she's incredibly oppressive there and currently arguably the best champion in the game, like an S plus support at the moment. Senna ADC primarily still goes for lethality variants, which just aren't performing that well at the moment, so she maintains her spot fairly low down on the tier list. Obviously, the other two big changes this patch were the nerfs towards D-Blade, which hurt a lot of marksmen. On top of this, we also saw nerfs towards Bork, which directly hit a couple of marksmen as well. But let's cover the tier list. So the D tier, gonna say relatively similar plus one addition. That is Tristana, who has really paid for her strength in the mid lane. The bot lane role, she is very much underperforming at the moment for a champion which in the past has done pretty successfully here. Yeah, really stuck towards the bottom of the D tier at the moment. In Corki's case, he's already died down pretty much completely in popularity in the ADC role. He had a brief spell when he got his rework, but chain nerfs towards mid lane has really hit him quite heavily here. Obviously, the build was kind of trending towards that Emax, Halo Blades, Collector into IE. I don't know if it's so much that anymore, but yeah, the champion's in a really unpopular and very weak spot at the moment here. Obviously, the champ tends to scale a bit more with Elo, as it is very early game skewed as well. The other two champions here are Varus and Kalista, both who have previously paid for their strength in competitive. In Kalista's case, she did take a bit of a hit with Bork being nerfed this patch, which is why she drops from the C tier down to the D tier. In Varus's case, he's being buffed up next patch, but is still very much underperforming in the ADC role at the moment. They basically completely killed his lethality builds. He doesn't have great options at the moment. Kraken was kind of holding him up when it was like doing a bit better as an item option, but they nerfed Kraken. They've nerfed Bork now, which was his other option for on hit, and yeah, he's really found himself in a bad spot in the D tier at the moment. Also a champion which tends to scale a bit more aggressively with elite, as they tend to utilize his kit a bit more effectively, with that ult being a very strong pick potential ability. Moving on to the C tier, Vayne sits towards the bottom of this tier. She took a pretty big hit with both D-Blade obviously being nerfed alongside a lot of the other marksmen and Bork being hit pretty badly. The champion has been struggling in the ADC role a bit, primarily because of her strength in the top lane, but she was fairly neutral across both. Obviously, she took a bit of a hit on the Q, where they increased the cooldown early and made it so you're more incentivized to Q max, as they took a bit of power away from her W. Overall, yeah, the champ's in a pretty rough spot at the moment. Her short range really prohibits her from being able to find much advantage early on into the game. Obviously, in isolation, she can outshine a lot of the other marksmen, but you don't really find those angles as much as you would obviously in the solo lanes, which is where she does tend to perform a bit better at the moment. Alongside Vayne, we have Senna, who arguably could be dropped down to the D tier with like the core lethality and crit variants. Obviously, if you pair it like playing the supportive style, you're not really playing her in the ADC role, so there's genuine argument that she should just be in the D tier as well, which actually I'm going to put her in the D tier. Her builds just aren't performing as well as in previous patches, even though obviously she's performing very well in the support one. Definitely sits in the D tier for the moment. Alongside Vayne, like now we have Aphelios, so Aphelios very high elo, hard to play marksman, tends to be very much OTP'd and finds a lot of success when he is heavily OTP'd. He does take a bit of a hit with the Doran's Blade changes, obviously. Does lose a bit of power there, losing some base health, losing 0.5 life still. Yeah, he's pretty balanced in the C tier for the most part. If he was any higher, he would be too strong in average play for the most part. Xayah and Ezreal are another two champions in the C tier, so they remain from last patch. In Xayah's case, she's just been underperforming for like the majority of the split. She never really recovered from Navori quick blades being taken out of the game. She doesn't really have the same level of strength on flicker blades. Obviously, she comes in traditionally as an answer to heavy engage, where she can really utilize her ultimate, but she is very much struggling still. Lost with the Kraken Slayer changes. Obviously, that was her core first item for a bit. Essence Reaver seems to be something which a lot of people are leaning to at the moment. But yeah, the champion underperforms. Not really much else to it. In Ezreal's case, he was underperforming, and then they buffed him up. He was overperforming, but he nerfed him back down. He now sits in the C tier, which is a pretty solid spot for him to be in for average play. Has a very high damage output if you're consistently landing your skill shots and utilizing his kit to its full extent. They are nerfing him 14.17, and he will definitely take a hit from that, but as he's not affected by the block changes, he still stays within the C tier at the moment. There is a genuine argument that Samira should be dropped down to the C tier. This champion is underperforming for average play, obviously tends to be a bit better in Elite, kind of akin to Draven, who is a bit better than Samira obviously at the moment, but there's definitely like snowball potential to this champion. It does just have a hard time into certain compositions. Certain pairings can obviously struggle with Samira. Like, you can't really pair her with enchanters. She just doesn't have that like strength which she needs earlier on into the game. Yeah, I'm gonna leave her at the bottom of the B tier, but she could arguably be a high C tier pick as well. Very reliant on snowballing, akin to Draven, who is a bit better than her at the moment, and something I'd recommend going to instead. Lucian, I'm actually going to put in between these two. So Lucian stays relatively neutral with the changes this patch. He lost some Q damage, but then gained some of that back through his passive, gaining a 5% AP ratio, well, gaining 5% AD ratio, going from 15 to 20% AD ratio, which is quite nice. It helps a lot of his synergies where you can really utilize and make a lot of combos out of his passive. Sona obviously was one of the stronger ones previously, like Braum now that it has been enabled on CC. Can definitely work quite nicely with him, but you're once again looking for those strong pairings. Nami is traditionally like his best pairing, and Milio is then considered his second best, primarily because of competitive, but don't let that shy away from other things. There are still like loads of decent pairings with this champion. Sivir, primarily before her ease to play, she has not got the snowball potential of the other three champions here, but her CSing, her scaling is a bit better, which is why I do recommend her a bit more for average play. I used to be a lot more favourable on Sivir. Like, I thought this champion for a while was like really good, but then it took a load of indirect nerfs and definitely lost a lot of power from that. Static was another big hit for her, but then a lot of the other champions obviously lost power from Kraken being nerfed, so she stayed relatively neutral, but yeah, definitely taken a bit of a hit. Really benefited when First Strike was performing quite well on her. She when that was beginning of his split where they like mega over buffed that rune, she really benefited from that. That was something she could opt into alongside Summonary with some like cleaver variations, but just isn't really opting into those at the moment, and yeah, she underperformed, so she sits towards the low end of the B tier. Yeso, also over my B tier, definitely performing better than he had been with the buffs towards his E, but still not quite finding the success he would want within the bot lane. Obviously, in past seasons, there's definitely been more of an A, close to S tier pick. Not really finding the same level of success on some of the itemization choices. Bork being nerfed, stayed, well, even though it got buffed for melee, stayed relatively neutral, if anything, power loss, with the compensation buffs, obviously. Yeah, the champion, if you can utilize Windwall effectively, and like you're running like obviously Exhaust and you're getting your core item first and you're proficient of a champion, can definitely be rewarding within the bot lane, but not quite the same level of success in previous seasons. Zeri is also within my B tier. This champion, still very good in Elite, tends to be a bit more performant there. If you can like land the autos and like really utilize the power of her like E. Okay. Well, the thing is, there is a mechanic on Zeri which requires auto attack to be on, so you can utilize it. It's where like you auto and then you fast E, or like E on the spot, and then you instantly autos you again, which is like a huge amount of damage to gain, obviously, as you don't go through the full E animation, but once again, that tends to be only primarily used in high elo. It can be very frustrating, and like a lot of people would just not opt into doing that. But the champion does have a lot of those mechanics, like making sure you're wall gliding effectively, making sure you're finding those angles. Yeah, definitely performs a bit better on Elite at the moment. Sits more within the B tier for average play. Ziggs and Veigar obviously benefit from the other champions being nerfed at the moment. Well, the AD champions being nerfed with Doran's Blade losing power. These two champions go up from like mid B tier options to like high B tier options. Obviously, Veigar got pushed out of the bot lane role previously with the ratios being added onto his abilities, making it so he could only really be played in the mid lane, but he still over time has gained and clawed back some of that power in the bot lane, so he's once again still a solid option here. In Ziggs's case, he's a bit on the weaker side at the moment compared to where he has been in past seasons, but he's still a very solid APC option. There are other recommended go-tos, which I'll talk about in a minute, but he is someone who can definitely function here, at least with a lot of the other champions being nerfed at the moment. And then being taken down from the A tier is Twitch. Twitch, when he's in the B tier, is arguably a weak champion. This pick obviously lost a lot of power with Bork being nerfed this patch. Alongside some of the other things being nerfed, which he utilized previously, and then him being directly nerfed at the end of last bit, I believe it was, where they nerfed his R base AD, and really took a big hit from that, as he was overperforming and then arguably underperforming. But yeah, going into this split, he is now he is underperforming. I think the champion probably deserves to be buffed going into 14.18. Obviously, it'd be nice to see him at Worlds. Will we? Probably not, but he is a solo queue orientated champion, so he should be a bit better than where he is at the moment. He drops from the A tier down to the B tier. Moving on to the A tier, we have a champion going up, and that is Hui. I believe Hui bot lane is incredibly underrated at the moment. I'd argue that he's even better than mid lane Hui in his current state. The synergies you can pair with the support, the less requirement of XP, like you tend to be a bit more gated by the amount of gold you can get on this champion. If you see as well, you can effectively get your items, whether that's like your Blackfire torches, your Archangels, your Liandries, your Ludens. There's like different variations you can play of this champion. I know some people really dislike Blackfire and some people really favor some of the other options, but it really depends on game state for the most part. But yeah, this champion's underrated in the bot lane at the moment. You can definitely have a lot of success on this pick, and I believe him to be a solid A tier pick. The other champions here are Caitlyn, who is getting buffed in 14.17, primarily because she's not really seeing that much competitive play, but she's a solid solo queue option still. If you're able to get early game advantages, getting the early turrets, then you can really heavily snowball, spike really nicely on free items, and then get some huge one-shot combos down, whether that's like on your collector, i.e. RFC spikes, and then there are some other variations. We've obviously seen like i.e. it's like first item, and then like going from there, whether it's like RFC, Untowers, Wild Arrows, and then LDR, stuff like that. There are variations. I primarily recommend just for collector, as that tends to be a bit more standard, but you do have options there, so solid A tier pick. Smolder, a bit underrated, but then also kind of leaning towards solo lanes as well at the moment. This champion definitely benefited from like chain buffs he received, obviously after they over-nerfed him. He does have the different item options and like your Essence Reavers, your Trinities, your Manamunes, your Shojans. There's kind of like different build paths there accessible to him. I know some people really like Cosmic Drive as like a third, fourth sort of option, and yeah, the champ's in a pretty good spot at the moment. Definitely spikes quite nicely mid-game when you have the 225 stacks. Getting that execute can be really beneficial. And yeah, he's a solid A tier pick. Kai'Sa, doing a bit worse now. Obviously, Static being nerfed, Kraken being nerfed, Bork being nerfed. That was kind of something she could go, not really that as popular. On top of this, she lost power because of the D-Blade nerfs, which did also directly hit her. And yeah, she's just dropped a bit, kind of sits towards a lower A tier option. Still very popular champion, I believe to be the second most popular pick in the ADC role after Jhin, who is performing very well at the moment. And yeah, she's like a low A tier option. Ashe getting nerfed next patch. For the moment, she is actually doing a bit better in Elite, which is kind of strange for like how Ashe should be. Like, she's perceived as an easy to play champion and someone who I'd recommend for her utility, her pretty standard play style, but her like value of E, her early game strength has definitely like attributed to a lot of strength in high elo, and yeah, she should be a bit weaker there. Like, I don't believe a champion like Ashe should be stronger in Elite at the moment, but obviously she's still an easy to play champion, but there's lots of simplicities to this pick, and she's a mid A tier option at the moment. Did lose power with Static being nerfed. That was something she was kind of leaning towards going, and yeah, the 30 HP nerf in 14.17 will definitely hurt her. Nyla, kind of underrated pick at the moment. Got buffed previously with the HP and the armor going up, and she did benefit from that. isn't bound to Fleet, which has been, or is going to be nerfed next patch. She goes Conqueror, tends to go the Collector into the IE, into the BT/LDR combo. And yeah, she pairs really nicely with with options like Taric and champions, which she can really utilize her passive effectively with the heal and shield power, and champions she can kind of go in with. And she's a good A tier pick, but tends to be a bit more reliant on pairings, which is why she doesn't really push up into those S tier spots. The other champions here are Swain and Swain, Jinx, and Kog'Maw. So Jinx actually is continuing to drop. She got directly nerfed on the Ultimate CD, which wasn't huge at the time, but then continuous nerfs towards systems she utilizes, and then nerfs towards her itemization have definitely dropped her down from like a high A tier pick in my opinion to like a low A tier pick. She's still very good if you can snowball, get those advantages. She can do a lot of damage, but she's nowhere near the powerhouse she used to be. She is more of a low mid A tier pick now. In Kog'Maw's case, he drops from the S tier to the A tier. The Bork nerfs have just dropped him down slightly, and in Swain's case, he now kind of sits towards the high end of the A tier, benefiting from obviously the other champions being nerfed and him staying in a relatively similar spot. Obviously, very low elo skewed though. You can't really play Swain in most. Swain is a bit more conditional though, but if you can find those conditional spots where you're into short range competitions, you can utilize your Rylai's, your Blackfires, your Malignances in situations, then he can be really effective in those spots. But he's not quite S tier worthy. He is definitely a high A tier pick at the moment. Moving on to the S tier, we have Karthus going up. Champion obviously benefited from all the other, for the most part, the other champions being nerfed. Was a high A tier pick, now jumps up into the S tier. Obviously, if you can get CC combos down with this pick, he does an absurd amount of damage. His ultimate is one of the strongest in the game. If you can position correctly, and yeah, you're landing your Qs, and this champion is an incredibly effective bot laner. He's gained a bit of popularity compared to where he was when he got those double nerfs towards his Q. That did hurt him in the bot lane and dropped him from the S to the A tier, but he does come back up with the nerfs to the other champions down here at the moment. The other three picks I have here are Brand, MF, and Jhin. Brand tends to be a bit more conditional. You're reliant a bit more on the Nami, but he's still a very strong champion as a standalone option. Also a bit more reliant on short range comps where you can fully rotate your combos, utilize Rylai's effectiveness, Liandry's effectiveness, where you're able to more consistently land your abilities, as you do have to be a bit closer to the target than some of the other options which have a bit more kiting power. In MF's case, she's definitely come out as a clear winner with some of the other champions being nerfed, and her being directly buffed on the W. That really did help her a lot. Boots being nerfed also means she can sit on T1s and just power through her items. Very strong and yeah, effective ADC at the moment. Also really easy to play, so definitely deserving on an S tier spot. Jhin, also doing really well at the moment, has options in both Fleet and Dark Harvest as rune choices, has item choices in both Collector and Static. Obviously, Static being nerfed have pushed him more to be more towards being relatively similar in win rate. Collector is what I'd recommend for snowballing. If you're just kind of CSing and you're playing more isolated, then Static can definitely be a solid option in those spaces. And then IE, RFC, Yuntau's, you can go LDR. Wouldn't really recommend Mortal Reminder as much on Jhin, but obviously it's a trade-off between do you want anti-heal, do you want 10 AD? Those are the options for you. And then BT is like a last slot, still a very good item. Jhin, definitely doing very well at the moment. My recommended ADC pick at the moment. And then Seraphine, obviously, has come out as the clear winner with a lot of the other champions being nerfed. She already was overperforming here. Has historically also been a very good bot laner, pairs really nicely with a lot of the champions, can really utilize her W in the bot lane role. She's also very strong in the support role at the moment, and yeah, obviously that has a level of coincidence with her strength as an APC. When the pick is good, at the moment she'll usually be good in like the APC role. That is just how the pick tends to function. As support strength, tends to be a bit weaker, but at the moment, yeah, very strong. I'm rambling, whatever. This champion, yeah, definitely my recommended go-to AP bot lane at the moment. Doesn't have the level of damage as some of the other options, but still very good CC, great shielding, great healing. Does do damage. Don't get it wrong. She still does a lot of damage if you can get those items, whether that's like your Blackfires, your Ludens. I've seen like different varieties. Obviously, you can still go like your Enchanter option if you're not as confident in your carry potential in the game, or if you have like other options, whether that's through like carries in separate roles, then yeah, the build options for you. She's in a very good spot at the moment. Definitely the clear winner of this patch. Is getting nerfed in 14.17, so if you are going to play it, definitely play it now. But yeah, Seraphine, Jhin, AP, AD option, good to go. Obviously, there's been a lot of shift around with the D-Blade changes, and those are my thoughts. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.